It's very strange when it was in the morning to get. Okay. Virginia, can you hear us okay?
I can. Good evening. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
Thanks.
With Director Crawley is participating remotely from Tenaya Lodge at Yosemite, where she's at a conference. So welcome everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's October 15th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting for Menlo Park Fire Protection District. And it is, right, see the clock, 7:05 on my watch. And we will take a roll call for attendance.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
Here.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director Crawley?
Present.
Thank you. And Director Solano?
Here. Okay, next up is Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody that can stand would please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We did not have a closed session this evening, so we don't have anything to report from closed session because we didn't have one. So I will move on to public comment. And this is an opportunity for those in person to make public comment on topics that are not on our agenda. And we have 4 so far public comment cards. I'm just going to take them in the order they were submitted. And I will call on Mr. Gary Wagner as the first one. And each of you is allocated 3 minutes of time to share your viewpoints, please. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. I live on Hedge Road, and I'm representing this community that surrounds 320 Sheridan. We recently submitted a petition to the city asking them to have an open second exit to that building. There are a number of reasons for that, but in particular, for this session, we would like to talk about fire. The recent 8-alarm fire at 2700 Middlefield Road showed how important it is to be able to place a fire truck with the wind blowing from behind so that you can put water directly on a building that's some distance away. If you will look at the map that I handed out along with the resolution that we'd like to present, that is a map.
Is this the map?
Yes, it is. That is a map that was provided by Alliant, and it's online, except that I put 2 additions to it. On the right-hand side, you can see a road that does not exist today called Van Buren Extension, which could be built for about $120,000 on Caltrans land, if we can ever figure out how to talk to Caltrans. And then in the lower left-hand corner, there is what's called a windrows map. And if you're not familiar with the windrows map, that tells you which direction the wind is coming from. So it says that 30% of the time it's calm in that area. 60% of the time the wind is blowing from the northwest quadrant. So the way the plan is, they put a fire gate on the right side or the southeast end. And so if they opened the fire gate and the truck came in, they would be not only trying to put water onto the apartment complexes, which is mostly at the northwest end, but they would be firing into the wind. If you look at it, you would also see that the largest parking lot where half the cars are parked is right exactly where that fire gate is, which is right next to the Van Buren extension. There's a little gate, you can see the gray. So in reality, if you have a thought experiment, you figure, okay, there's a fire. Everybody's rushing out Sheridan because we can't get up Van Buren. The fire truck not being able to get that way because there are very narrow roads at Van Buren going to the edge. all 24-foot wide roads. If a fire truck came in, he would be going into the back end of a parking lot that's clogged with people trying to get out this narrow neck at the northwest end. The best way to deal with this would be to have an opening with a Van Buren extension, in which people would be told ahead of time that if there's a fire, take that large parking lot and go out Van Buren. Van Buren is a long straight road with many exits so that it wouldn't get clogged. And then a fire truck could come in Sheridan and it would be able to spray water onto the apartments that are closest, 1 and 2, and spray the water with the wind from behind. I can read the resolution if I have time. It's resolution on improving fire safety and emergency response at the 320 Sheridan proposed apartment complex. Whereas the Menlo Park Fire Board has reviewed the plans for the proposed apartment complex at 320 Sheridan Drive and has noted the following: the wind at Sheridan Apartments predominantly blows from northwest towards Van Buren Road. The proposed plan for the Sheridan Apartments only includes one entrance to the west of Sheridan Drive and do not include a second entrance to the east of Sheridan Drive. Due to the direction of the wind and the lone entrance to the west of Sheridan Drive, firefighters pouring water on a potential fire will be required to direct water into the wind and will be hampered in their ability to fight a multi-story blaze. And the inclusion of a second entrance to the Sheridan Apartments to the east of Sheridan Drive would increase fire safety for teachers and residents in surrounding areas.
Oh.
Am I over?
You can do anything.
May I continue? By allowing the time of
Yeah,
advance,
this is
therefore be resolved.
anything.
Park
No,
Fire
so it's
Board Board hereby acknowledges and agrees that the inclusion of
I told you,
second
they
would increase fire
Um,
safety for teachers and residents in the surrounding areas. Resolve further that in the interest of public safety, the Menlo Park Fire Board urges the Menlo Park City Council to require a second entrance located to the east of Sheridan Apartments. And resolve further that the Menlo Park Fire Board urges the Menlo Park City Council to use all means available to ensure that fire trucks and emergency vehicles are not slowed from accessing an emergency situation due to the lone entrance located to the west of Sheridan Apartments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I will now go to Mr. Mark Richter.
So could I just, one quick thing, Michelle, I don't know if you're keeping the time or weekend up here, whatever your preference is, but my guess is that was slightly more than 3 minutes. But, and we don't usually have a lot of public attendance or public comments, so bear with us as we work through that, but what's your
Okay.
preference up here?
I'm happy to set a timer. I think Gary was letting that one go past a little bit, but I'm gonna start a timer, so.
We'll let you know.
You know, all these people are here, and I think they should have as much time as they need. I know, you know, some speak small, longer, some speak shorter, and I think we should afford them over the 3 minutes, and we have in the past. And I think they should have enough time in order to express what they want to say, because they're here.
We'll see how it goes. Mr. Richter.
Yes, thank you. So I would echo what Gary said, and I live on Hedge Road as well. We've lived there since 1975. And the community has grown over the years. And the James Flood School site has been vacant for a long time. And to put an apartment complex of, I think it's 80 units, 88, it was a shock to us all. And as we digest that and get used to it, the thought of that size complex there, you know, we'll get used to that. But the fact of the matter is of only one exit and entrance into there is frightening. And as an example, a few months ago, there was a garage fire on Sheridan Drive. And as a layperson, we live down the street, but as a layperson seeing the fire apparatus having difficulty getting just into that house was unbelievable. And so as a layperson, imagining an 88 unit apartment building with a mass casualty big disaster going on, how are those people gonna get out with one entrance and exit? Just from that apartment complex, let alone from the rest of us who live on Hedge Road. And there were the other streets. Dunsmere, Greenwood. People, there's gonna be a mass casualty.
Okay, thank you for your comment. And next is Mrs. Mary Pimentel.
That's me. I just think this is such an ill-conceived idea. It's like the Roach Motel where you invite the critters into the motel and trap, because that's what it would be in the event of a disaster. And it just makes sense, common sense, to have another exit, because if in fact the people living there are gonna be teachers and workers in the Ravenswood School District, it's a direct shot from the other side of that Sheridan property, right straight down Van Buren. There's never traffic on Van Buren. And if you don't believe me, drive by there and go down that side. It's a straight shot to Willow Road and then over to school. There's also a bus line and stores on Willow, whereas the one exit would take you towards Marsh Manor, which is a lot further than just going out the back and to Willow Road. I mean, common sense just dictates that. And I think the developer just wants to do this as economically and this way as possible. But it just isn't gonna work for the safety of all concerned. You know, if you value safety in a neighborhood, then do something about this. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last person we have on our list is Mr. Skip Hilton.
Mind if I stand?
You're welcome to stand. I would think you're the one that would want to sit, but.
Yeah, it's actually, strangely, it's easier to stand.
Okay,
Thank you to the Menlo Park Fire Board for listening to the concerns of citizens. My name is Skip Hilton. I'm a 31-year resident of Menlo Park. 27 of those years living in the suburban park neighborhood. And I'm here in support of the resolution that Gary mentioned, to ask the fire board to approve and adopt that resolution. We're aware that that's not necessarily a binding requirement on the developer or even on the city, but we think it does a lot to speak to the logic of adding a second entrance for 320 Sheridan. I believe relying on one entrance exit does present a serious problem. Oh, I should say, I'm also summarizing a letter that I submitted to Ms. Mayor and also to Director Solano and to Fire Chief Lorenzen. So this should be in your records. You have the full details. I'll just hit some highlights. I think a second entrance or a single entrance presents a serious problem for emergency and fire access to the planned apartment buildings as well as to our neighborhood suburban park. In addition, a second entrance would be much more convenient for the new residents there. 88 units could be 150 to 200 souls living at that location, which are supposed to be teachers, faculty, and staff of Ravenswood as they access their workplaces over in Belhaven community via Van Buren and Willow. It will also reduce the elevated rush hour traffic and dangers at Bay and Ringwood, which are going to be further exacerbated if Atherton is rezoning the 4 parcels on Bay and Ringwood, which they are planning to do tomorrow night. Town council. That's an additional 36 housing units that would be added to the already impacted Port Harambe. Now, I'm not an expert on fighting fires, wind patterns, or safety and escape routes, but it does seem to me a logical thing that the development of this size, which is now currently designed as a landlocked parcel at the end of a suburban street, which has local residential traffic, doesn't make sense. And having 2 entrances to this for fire safety, for egress, for a host of reasons, makes a lot of sense. And it's surprising that this developer, who has done projects like this in the past, has never done one before, and it's coming in and out of such a large development. Also providing that option, that second option for residents of the project, closer to Willow Road, rather than having to circle all the way through Springle Park and down May Road. As I said, it's a highly impacted roadway already. And if you need evidence of that, you did have to do a traffic study, their housing element update, they already determined that it's above the DMT that's required to be able to do development without locations. And lastly, it's just, it will improve the traffic safety of all of Menlo Park. So, you know, down Bay Road, down all these areas, spreading that traffic out means it's safer for bikes, it's safer for pedestrians, it's safer for automobiles, and it will just provide a lot more access. I know the Menlo Park Fire District, and the fire department is, I'm almost done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take
It
your
is,
time.
is a very, well-known disaster recovery. I know we may even send some people to North Carolina and places in the east to support that, which I'm very proud of that fact that we do that. I would hate to see something happen at this property, during an earthquake or a fire or some other disaster event where we're unable to access and save those people. So again, I ask for your support in supporting the resolution, and approve and to adopt this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And we had one more card submitted here, which is Ms. Williams.
Thank you. I'm Sally Williams and I live at 311 Sheridan in Menlo Park, right next door to the parcel that we're discussing tonight. And I really wanted to attend because we actually are the home that had the house fire a few months ago. We were doing some electrical work in our home and a fire broke out. It was about 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. And that is a time of day when our neighborhood is packed with people walking dogs, kids on bikes, people returning from work, Amazon trucks, UPS trucks, very busy time of night. And we're very grateful that the fire department arrived in a timely manner and put out the fire. But it was an eye opener to what can happen in that part of that neighborhood and particularly with the parcel. The trucks within minutes of our fire, the trucks were on all the way down on Sheridan and then all the way up Hedge Road in the direction of where some of our people here live, but also on the other part of Hedge. I heard from neighbors after that, it literally, you couldn't have gotten through the neighborhood after the emergency vehicles and fire trucks arrived. So my concern was if there was an event in that new building complex on the far end, I don't know how they would physically get there without a second entrance. And I think it really becomes a high risk without that second entrance. We're talking life and death. We were very fortunate because we were home at the time of our house fire, but it's a high risk situation without the additional entrance and exit into that new complex. So I support the resolution that has been put before you, and we're really hopeful that we can come to some agreement on this, as it's really a high risk situation without it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I appreciate all of you coming. By the policy here, this item's not on our agenda. That's why you have public comment on things not on the agenda. So we won't be discussing your particular items. We did receive correspondence from a number of you. Correspondence is in our packet. That was available to all board members. That correspondence is also with some of your personal information redacted, is available on the website as well. So it was made publicly available prior to the meeting. And on that, we're going to move on.
I have a couple of questions.
We're not going to discuss.
Yeah, we get to ask questions during public comment. We
believe that's
can't
the
discuss
case.
it, but we can ask questions.
You can ask a clarifying question without, where the line is not really a legal line, it's really up to the board, how it wants to manage it.
Give it a go. We'll see where it goes.
Thank you. That's true.
Make sure it's a clarifying question.
In your discussions with the developer and so forth, is there any reason to believe that using Van Buren as you're proposing would reduce the number of units in development?
Not the number of units, but would definitely reduce the traffic.
No, I just wanted to know if it somehow made the development less. And out of curiosity, what are you told is the reason why that your idea is not being considered?
Well, because the way it was presented, they own that property, Ravenswood School District, and it's been like a dinosaur asset. They haven't been able to use it. So a developer came in and said, we'll do this and that. And that was their proposal, to only have one entrance and one exit. And I think because they didn't want to fight the battle of going down Van Buren.
No, that's not the reason. They wanted to make it as cheap as possible. If you read I think California Fire Code, which mimics the federal fire code, it says says if you're under 200 apartments and you put in a sprinkler system, one exit is sufficient. Except that this one exit is at the end of a cul-de-sac on the narrowest roads in Menlo Park. These are all 24-foot wide roads.
I can add to that too, Director Bernstein. In addition to what Ms. Heaney here said, there's no requirement by the developer to put this entrance under the current, city zoning. And they are trying to do it as economically as possible, but also because this housing development is slated to be 88 below market affordable housing units, it's taking advantage of a special state law that was passed, which allows it to go forward without going through CEQA, without going through that level of traffic analysis, safety analysis, and also go through without any approval by the Menlo Park Planning Commission or the Zoning Commission. However, our understanding is the developer is going to bring it to the Planning and Zoning Commission because they're interested in getting awarded $3 million in below market housing funds. So this is our opportunity to present the safety issues, and having our board support that will be a huge asset.
Thank you. I have one clarifying question.
Claire, we should really wrap this up, I think.
I don't know if it was you or someone mentioned that there was another exit somewhere and you talked about.
Yeah,
The Van Buren, let me get the question out. The Van Buren is, I noticed from the map that there's a parking lot. It looked like it's developed to go out, looked like next to the light move parking lot or.
Yes, they made a deal with Life Moves that they will put a locked fire gate in. If you look at a bigger map, to get into that, a fighting multi-story building, you need a tiller truck, and it has to go around a roundabout and then make a sharp right turn. Then they would come up to the gate and have to unlock the gate, at which point they would come into the back end of the biggest parking lot, which would probably be jammed of all people trying to get the cars out. So it's just not having that gate open and the circuitous route to get down there, where if you put in the road as marked, that could be built on Caltrans land. We try to talk to Caltrans, and Caltrans won't talk unless the city asks them, and the city has asked to do that.
Okay, thank you all very much for your comments. We're gonna move on with our agenda. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. You're also welcome to depart.
What is the agenda?
So the agenda was posted on the web. The first item on the agenda is the report of the fire chief. And he just gives an update, and the chief will be making some comments about the district's role in new construction developments, but those are very minimal comments. And those will be posted to the web in a minute. Okay, thank you for attending.
For your listening pleasure, I will even move it to the front of my report. If you want to listen briefly about the fire district's role in development projects, you don't have to, you won't hurt my feelings if you don't stay. This is all,
Oh, thank you.
this is all recorded for you, so you can also review it by accessing our website tomorrow. So anyway, my fire chief's report.
Thank you, Chief.
Director Bloom, for our community members that came here, thank you, each of you, and for the 50 some odd that wrote comments into the board, thank you. I've read them all. Like I said, I will move just the quick comments related to development projects to the front. They really are just trying to share with you what the fire district's role is in any project. Just know this, we review all projects from homes to large development, like the Sheridan project, any 80 Grove project, etc. Also understand we are never the primary agency. You know, it's unique about the district. Generally, when you go to a city, a full service city, they have their own fire department, and generally their fire prevention folks will review it in-house. Since the fire district covers the 3 cities here and part of the unincorporated communities, the fire district has that same role that a normal city fire prevention unit have. When we are reviewing a project, we review the projects for compliance with the California Fire Code and any pertinent local ordinances. So I think, as everybody has sent this in, I guess my encouragement to you is the best place to direct it to is City of Menlo Park, the Planning Commission. Those are the ones that really have impact. Ours is really looking at the fire code and trying to apply it equally across the fire district. And then also know this, that we do have the opportunity on some of these larger projects, when it's going through CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, to make comments on other impacts of the fire district. So one is a code review. And the other, like we have some large projects going in here that will have impacts on our ability even to move through our streets. We'll be able to have some comments about the impacts and mitigations to the fire district response. So that is without, getting into all the details. I appreciate everybody's passion as a member of the community too. I get it. Understand that our position here in fire prevention as a fire chief is to, take a look at the fire code and apply it evenly. Obviously, you have a voice with our board. But that is really it, and the board may choose through their process to agendize further discussion. I will also share, I know you guys had a resolution. I know just with the way the Brown Act works, we can't adopt it tonight because it hasn't been agendized. The board may choose to take that at a later point in time of the meeting. So we don't want to dismiss the fact and the work that we need. With that concludes. And it's a great time if you guys don't want to hear the rest of my report to exit. I'm going to share kind of what's going on with the fire district. So you won't hurt my feelings if you. Yeah,
Well, Chief, while we're on that, okay, I think the key word here is minimum. For up to 200 units, they talk about a minimum of one exit. If that doesn't necessarily mean that they can build more than one egress, but it means that they can legally build one egress.
This topic's not on the agenda, so.
No, but I
the
wanted to
chief
verify
continue on
that.
with
I
his
wanted
report.
to verify that since the chief brought it up in his report. So the developer can make more than one egress if they feel fit. So I just want to verify that. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you both for attending. On to the remainder of my report, starting from the top. Quick update on facilities. You have a fire station one report that John Hitchcock, we're going to be providing this at every meeting so you can kind of see what's happening. The first part really just talks about what's already been done. The major plan revision item on there isn't incredibly major. It's just that as we've been going through the process of trying to screen the project, we're having some challenges in the bioswales, and we're consulting with a landscape architect to try and come up with some alternatives for, again, project screening. That's really the only thing that's gone on since we last met. Some other updates on recruitments and promotions. We had a permit coordinator position. It's a new classification that we created out of an existing one. We flew that, had 32 applications for that. Ultimately, our successful candidate was our own internal Janie Kunanen, who was successful in the recruitment position. She had filled in on an interim basis, so congratulations to Janie. She will be filling that position. When is it effective? The 16th, which is great.
What kind of permits are these?
So these are when people come into the front door for a variety of building permits, sprinklers. I don't know what all the different types of permits are that come in, but Janie will help them with the intake and the online processing, and they get reviewed by Lenny, our permit or plan reviewer. So it's generally related to building and construction permits. We will also be having a mechanic opening that we have not started recruitment yet. We're working on that, but that will be coming up. Other items to talk about, a little update on our community engagement. Right now, Heather reports out that we are in the midst of our CERT Academy. We've got about 20 community members participating, and they will graduate at the end of this month. They trained another group of CERT members in firefighter rehab. Along those lines, we were also able to activate our CERT team with our most recent urban search and rescue task plan. And they put out a call to anyone that was interested in coming in and helping, and we had a number of CERT volunteers that came in to help with the check-in process. Really nice way to engage our community volunteers with, the firefighters and the FEMA task force of this. That was great. I came in on, I think it was late on a Saturday night, and they were all in there helping the rather cumbersome long checkout process. Physicals, checking out equipment, quite a big task. Also, they are awaiting word on whether they'll be needed to help when the convoy returns. They should be arriving later this week on Thursday. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. They also had a booth at the City of Menlo Park Employee Health Fair to share information on personal emergency preparedness. Classes that are ongoing, safety and fire extinguisher training with the staff at Sand Hill Assisted Living Facility. Monthly first aid CPR classes were taught. Also first aid CPR and AED with the staff at Ravenwood School. We had our monthly fire marshal pop-up event. This was at Cafe Zoe over in Director Bernstein's neighborhood, nicely attended. And then lastly, very importantly, a reminder that our pancake breakfast is this Saturday at Station 1 from 7:30 to 11. So please come out and join in the fun and taste the pancakes. Also going on, a quick update on the strategic plan. That is, we're moving into it hot heavy next week. Monday night, we have our community meeting with our community members and stakeholder groups. They are going to be meeting us for dinner, I think over at one of the facilities in Menlo Park at the City Hall. That's where we get some nice input from them. Then we spend Tuesday and Wednesday with staff reviewing all of the feedback that we've gotten via the surveys, and also all of the information that AP Triton has been collecting over the last couple of months to start talking about visioning and where we might be going. Wednesday night, we have a board special session from 7 to 9 on Wednesday, next Wednesday night, for the board to have input on the strategic plan. And then Thursday morning for the first 3 hours of the morning, we have kind of our closeout, kind of tying it all together. And we'll have some more interactions with AP Triton moving forward as they work on the actual product. Current deployments. Everyone's aware that we sent the FEMA team out initially as a Type 3 team, and then as Hurricane Milton got worse and worse, the request came in from FEMA for us to upstaff to a Type 1 team, which meant flying out another 30 some odd people out Pensacola, Florida. Initially, they were heading towards Atlanta. I think they got redirected to Pensacola. They staged there, and the hurricane came through, minor activity, and they got demobbed on Sunday. So half the team was back, half the team is still slowly working their way back. I think they were in Texas last night, and they're somewhere between there and here today, hoping to see them back on Thursday.
Chief, Director Crowley's got her hand up, just.
Oh,
there's a
sure.
Question there.
Director Crowley.
Hi, Chief. Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there tonight. Thanks for the update, Mark. The update on the community engagement part, I just want to tell you that I heard from a couple of friends in East Palo Alto who were impressed, and they want to be more engaged with the district now. So I'm encouraging the joint CERT, but I just want you to know that people over there were very, very happy about, just watching. I don't even think they were involved as much as the CERTs were. So just kudos to the staff and to Heather and everyone who made that an experience for the CERTs, and also, possible new volunteers. So I'm encouraging them to become CERTs. So Robert, I'll call you about that if I hear of anything.
I did see one of our East Palo Alto CERT members out there at the warehouse. And also, there will come a point in time in the hopefully not too distant future when we give anybody, even if they're not a CERT member, the opportunity to engage and help out in areas that are non-CERT centric. So That would be good. I was just about to also share, just as a reminder to the board and also to any of our community members that are listening, when we deploy our FEMA task force or we send strike teams out of county, almost always, and in the case of this Florida deployment, we're getting reimbursed from FEMA for all of our personnel costs and expenses and a little bit of overhead costs on top of that. So this ultimately doesn't have a financial impact on the fire district when we make these deployments. Same thing with state and federal fires. We're almost always getting fully reimbursed on those also. One other thing that's on well, a couple other things that are on my report. Cal Chiefs Conference is going on right now. I will be flying there tomorrow morning. I am sitting on a panel talking about statewide reimbursements, ironically, what we were just talking about. Trying to share with everybody in the fire service all the differences and the complicated ways there are to get reimbursed. So hopefully that will be a well-attended conference. Also, I just wanted to share briefly a quick update on the 2700 Middlefield investigation report. Chief Johnston is still working away on that. He is, I believe, hopeful to have it in mid-November. So he has, I would imagine, though I don't pry, determined a cause, and he's just trying to make sure everything in the report is I's are dotted and T's are crossed before it's. So, yes.
Yeah, who's the lead agency that's investigating?
That's,
We are.
we've been assisted by a number of fire agencies in San Mateo County. And I'm trying to remember if it was Bureau of Firearms, Alcohol, I can't remember. ATF, thank you. It's just not one. ATF also is at least partnering with us, but we're the lead agency.
Is it a federal investigation or a state? Or
Just local.
It's just local?
Yeah.
Are the elements of the whatever evidence was collected, are we collecting the evidence as the primary agency, or is another agency helping us with that?
That I know.
Well, that would be important if they found any criminal intent or anything.
He mentioned to me that there's a detective at the sheriff's office assigned to it.
Chief Johnson did.
That's it, okay. That would not be true to court because it should go through the DA's office. If you could check on that, chief, to find out if it's the sheriff's office or the DA's office.
Sure. Chief, I know Chief Johnson was on. I'll probably get a text message later.
Yeah, I thought he was on.
In Virginia, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, Mark, I just want to say thanks to all the folks who have deployed. It's gotten quite some press coverage. And just, people are just very thankful that, some of our guys have been deployed there, and they're appreciative of the help that we're giving them, because a lot of people that I've spoken with, and it hasn't been like a lot, but enough, they have friends and family on the East Coast, so they're obviously concerned. So I just want to thank you and, the crew for doing all that you're doing, and just know that the community is very appreciative of it. Thanks.
Thank you, and checking to make sure I didn't miss anything. I have two outstanding staff reports now. One is the ISO review that we're gonna do in November, and the electrification of fire service vehicles is now on, I'm keeping track of it, and that is a staff report and conversation that will happen at some point in the future. We don't have a specific date set. And then just a follow-up. We are the collectors of evidence per Chief Johnston, yes, and then we work with law enforcement depending on if it's criminal or not. I can get you more information if you have more questions. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And we will move on to, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, the Fire Station 1 update. The first sentence here says the board of directors approved the Station 1 project at their June 11th, 2024 board meeting. I didn't think it was the project was approved, I mean, there's a concept now. And I thought you'd also promised that we would be able to kind of master plan the whole site and.
You still will. Yeah, so, I appreciate that the words don't make that very clear. You have a number of milestone areas where we will come back to the board for approval, which will also include additional looks at the plans and, yes, so, really what it is, I mean, it doesn't say the entirety of what you did at the June board meeting, but it was to approve the concept and allow us to move forward with the architects to invest another $1 million+ dollars. And there are still a number of go, no-go points at which we're gonna come back to the board for your approval. So rest assured, we're not moving forward with anything other than just continuing to engage with the architects and work with the city of Menlo Park on what the permitting and planning process is.
Okay, well, I just want to be sure we leave a trail in this sense. And is there some way that the minutes can reflect what you just said and so forth? What you just said corresponds to what I believe to be true.
I'll make sure next month's report is a little bit clearer, so it will be reflected and give us nice footprints as part of the board packet, if that works.
Okay, yeah, I worry that I'm gonna read tomorrow that they've broken ground on it or something like that.
Yes, no, yes.
And then I have just one more question, and this is a true question, and part of my perspective comes from the fact that as a developer of child care centers and schools, I've had to work with a number of communities and public agencies and so forth. I was under the impression that the fire marshal is authorized to object to anything that is considered a significant threat to health and safety, regardless of whether it's in the code or not in the code. Am I wrong about that?
That is, I mean, now we would have to talk specifically to Chief Johnston, and that probably could get into, more than what's included here. So I don't know the answer to that. I know we try and objectively apply the fire code across the district, so we're pretty even and not subjective. I don't know in what situations that a fire marshal would raise their hand, and if that was even a possibility to throw the flag and say, no, you can't move forward with this, but we can certainly talk about that on maybe a future agenda item. If that, because that may end up coming up at the end of the meeting too, that the board might have a desire to talk about some of the additional projects that are on the horizon and what the fire district's ability is, as far as weighing in on those projects, other than California Fire Code compliance.
You've made a statement, you basically said, well, basically our role is just to kind of look at the code and so forth. But I thought that it actually was much stronger than that. And I'd like to know as a board member, what the limits of the authority of the fire marshal, what it is.
I think we gotta tread carefully on stuff like that, because at some point, the fire marshal become more liable, and the district will become more liable, I think, I'm not a lawyer, in making judgment beyond the scope of work of what is pulled by the code and by law. Because, I mean, we all got feelings that we may feel as though we should be doing more, but if it exceeds our responsibility, I think we will be open and liable for some suit if any kind of serious damage may occur based on our feelings.
I recommend we say that and the related topics for the new proposed agenda items. We can try to bring clarity to what the board wants to have for follow-up on these items as new agenda items. Sounds good. Okay. All right, consent calendars. Anybody want to remove anything from the consent calendar before we get a motion to approve the remaining items? There's 3 items on it.
Yeah, I would like to remove number 4, please.
Anybody else?
I can make a motion. To
Please.
approve the consent calendars 2 and 3.
There's a motion by
I'll second.
Director Solano. Director Crawley has seconded it, and given that Director Crawley is remote, we will do this by roll call. Michelle?
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bloom.
Aye. Okay, so that motion passes unanimously, and now we can talk about the CalPERS pension annual valuation reports as of June 30th. And we have Elaine and others here to answer questions if you have some.
Well, I'll tell you why I pulled it off. There's a lot in here. And, I mean, there's 4 different, very long reports that are in here, and I'm not able to, review all these in any kind of effective manner. But I'm very distressed that things keep getting worse. I know when we read the narrative, it doesn't say that, it sort of says, oh, things are kind of getting better, but when you look at the numbers are all looking worse. It's costing us more every year, it's gonna cost us more next year. I know they said, well, in the future, it'll come down and so forth. But the numbers don't reflect that. The numbers show that the costs are gonna go up. And there's some stuff that they're proposing here that I don't understand its implications. I'm hoping, it's hard for me to read the language of this, but it suggests that for agencies of a certain size, they're going to change the rules of the way they've been doing it. And I have a feeling that we're gonna get screwed once again on this.
I would like to clarify that, Director Bernstein. So what CalPERS is proposing with the change, it's just the reporting of it. So it's still gonna be the same structure, same information, same everything. So what's gonna happen is right now, we have 4 plans. We have 2 for safety and we have 2 for miscellaneous plans. So what they're gonna do is they're just gonna combine the 2. So there's gonna be 1 for safety, whether it's classic or Peppra, and then there's gonna be 1 for miscellaneous, whether classic or Peppra. So the way they do it, it's not gonna change at all. It's just that they're gonna consolidate the numbers. So that's what they're planning to do. It's not yet final. They are still talking about it. There are some, outreach that's going on right now, and it's still in the talks. So if ever, they would, move forward with this, we'll definitely let the board know. But as of now, it's just a plan, and then there's no change at all with, how they do things. It's just how they report it.
So let me just, I'm not doubting you, Billy. So when they give me this, I don't know, roughly 20-page procedure here, this is just a proposal at this time?
No, that's actually the actual valuation report as of June 30, 2023.
Okay.
So what if the proposal would happen if that moves forward, the next valuation report that we're gonna report out next year, we're just gonna have like 2 instead of 4.
So is it possible that the change they're making, I know you're saying they're just gonna consolidate the data or something. Is it possible that consolidating the data will make our cost go up or?
No. So if ever there's gonna be, some, they're gonna consolidate everything except for the normal cost percentage, because we have, different, normal cost contributions, whether it's Peppra or classic. But everything else, it's gonna stay the same. Your liability is gonna stay the same. Like right now, if we take a look at, let's say for example, let's say on page, let's say on page 4 of the packet or of the report, which is page 64 of the packet. So the first 2 tables there, it shows the miscellaneous classic plan and then the miscellaneous Peppra plan, right? So the accrued liability, instead of having 169,235.07 for fiscal year 22-23 and 1,671,352 for miscellaneous Peppra plan, what's gonna happen is they're gonna combine it. So most likely they're just gonna sum it. So there's nothing that's gonna change when it comes to reporting whatever actual assets and liabilities are. Again, they're just consolidating the numbers.
Okay, I have two more specific questions, well, and that you've highlighted an important page here. There's a sentence here that says, given this, it is worth looking into the long-term rates to have a more comprehensive look at CalPERS performance, and then right below that is a chart that shows we were doing better 30 years, if we include data from 30 years ago, than if we look at more recent data. That's suggesting to me that our returns are getting worse and worse as time marches on. Is that your conclusion?
It's not necessarily Director Bernstein, because CalPERS really is, it's a long-term plan. So the reason why I actually added, the 1 year, performance, for CalPERS is just to give an overview of, what the performance was last year. But eventually what matters really is, the long-term effects or the long-term, investment returns, or, the performance of, the plans in itself. Because again, this is basically CalPERS is long-term, it's not, short-term. And with the markets, of course, there's going to be ups and downs. That's why it's essential for us to take a look at, the 30-year return, because that's pretty much, going to tell you if it's, on a 30-year return, it's 7.5%, and our discount rate is 6.8%. If the trend continues, then, most likely we're going to be 100%, funded by the time, I think, the plan, by 10, 20 years from now. And, with the way, CalPERS is working, they have different policies on how they handle like risks and volatilities, when it comes to market and handling, the unfunded, liabilities and things like that. So I would say it's an overall approach, and, we're not really just looking into, just the 1 year performance of, the market, because we all know like it's very volatile.
I'm not challenging you, I'm just trying to understand, why does looking at the 30-year-old, the data that includes 30-year-old data, why is it worth looking at that? What does that do for us? I guess I don't understand. Do we think we're gonna go back to that time, or?
It's not like we're gonna go back to it, it's more of, the way it shows basically what the historical returns are, on, that specific time frame. It may not be, what, it would be, in the next 5, 10 years or 15 years, right? But it's just worth looking into, the historical returns of the performance of, the plans for CalPERS.
But I could also argue that what's happened is, as CalPERS has gotten bigger and bigger, it's had to go for investments that have a lower yield. And so the bigger it gets, the worse the situation gets. In other words, I view it as a negative, but.
Yeah, that's why I think CalPERS has, basically an entire group of, our entire division just for investments, where they would really, analyze, the risk and returns of each of the asset allocation that we would have in the portfolio. Like, for a given year, let's say they have, 5 different asset allocations. There's public equity, there's private equity, there's public debt, bonds, there's, real assets, things like that. So on a given year, they would basically, analyze like each of, the allocation percentage, allocated, to that specific, category, and then they would analyze whether or not, it warrants, the increase or decrease in that certain percentage. Because again, what they're trying to do is, they're balancing the risks and the returns in order to meet the target. So right now, of course, last year, it's not so much of a good news, but, as preliminary, if, this June 30th, 2024, the preliminary returns is, over the 6.8% discount rate. So that's basically a decrease, our contributions in our UAL in the upcoming valuation report for next year.
Can I interject something just on that point? Because the finance committee did spend some time on this. A really important reminder is that the data in this report is through June of 2023. So all the news you've heard about the markets hitting record highs and all those things, and bond yields being great and everything else, are not reflected, because it's as of June of 23, not as of June of 24. So they're more than a year behind on the reporting. So I just want to point that out, because that gives you, in a way, a deceptive view of the returns anyhow, because it's not current.
Oh.
And so that's where historical, going back 30, it's not unusual in financial reports that they report long-term history. That's a pretty common practice in all kinds of investment reports. What is unusual from my perspective, is more this long-term delay where you're looking, we're here in October and we're talking about how the world looked as of the end of June 2023. So, it's just,
The thing that bothers me is that they've used it to justify not changing the discount rate. And not changing the discount rate hurts the district. Because it lowers the contributions of the participants in the plan. And we don't get higher contributions from the plan participants as a result of that. And and the unfunded liability increases because the participants are not paying their fair share.
Yeah, so with, I would just say that Dr. Bersin, for, the decision to, not increase or decrease, the current discount rate, it actually doesn't affect us currently, because it stays the same, that's status quo, pretty much. So if they decrease it or increase it, that's, the time when we're gonna see the impact on our contributions, but, right now, they actually kept it the same. And next year, they're gonna have a full asset liability management where they would actually analyze that again and see if if it makes sense, given the current market conditions and future projections, if it's still worth to keep the 6.8% discount rate or whether to lower it or increase it to a certain percentage. But as of now, they kept it the same. There's no impact on us. And again, I would just like to reiterate, the June 30, 2020, this is as of June 30, 2023 evaluation. It's a 1-year lag. So we're just really looking at the report, from a prior year standpoint. But at the same time, these reports, it won't affect us, budgetarily. This fiscal year, it starts, the effect of this, the contribution rates and, the UAL, contributions as well. It's not going to start until fiscal year 25-26. So we actually have time to actually incorporate it into the next year's budget cycle. So there's a 1-year lag between the valuation report and the presentation date, but there's a 2-year lag between the valuation date and then the contribution year.
I have a clarifying question for me when you're saying, could you explain to me on page 64, there's a table that says 30-year and down and goes to 5-year. One is at 7.5%, and the other is 6.1%. You mentioned that at some point we are, first of all, are we focusing on which duration period of time? Are we on 5-year or are we focusing on 30-year duration?
We're not really focusing on, a specific, duration, whether it's 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, or 30 years, Director Jones. So basically what this says really is, the average returns for a certain period. And again, it's a normal practice, for CalPERS to actually present this, in their, financial, reports. So essentially, for this type of plan, basically, it's ongoing, right? So we have current retirees, then we are funding, our future retirees. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, we're just only focusing on 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. It's most likely gonna be a continuing, basis where we actually would analyzing the performance of CalPERS. But, again, this is really just to show, the past, historical performance of CalPERS.
So, moving back to page 62, under item number B, is talk about the total UAL, and it goes on the second sentence, then it starts talking about UAL is increased when actual plans experience is different from the plan's assumptions. I think you mentioned something like that earlier. And it gives an example and said it's when the actual investment return is lower than the discount assumption. And it can also happen when salary increases, inflation, demographic changes, such as high level of turnover, increase, can you explain how that relates to the actual investment in itself? I mean, are these factors that help change part of whether we get a 7 or 6%? No.
It's just changing the demographics of our plan. So how the demographics change is based on like wage increases that we provide employees, the age of our employees, all that is costed out to determine what our unfunded, or what our liability is for the plan. So it doesn't impact the rate that we get, it just impacts how much our plan costs to fund, like, Elaine said, our future retirees, which would be our current workforce and our current retirees.
So
You're shooting at a moving target, in other words.
Because these factors are gonna change. So explain to me the chart on page 63, up at the top, we talked about the CalPERS, ADP, to UAL, and then it gives, I guess, numbers, the fiscal year, and it gives the amount. So if we say that this goes to 2023, so are these amounts that we pay, are we obligated to pay every year, or you want that money?
No, so basically for UAL, Dr. Jones, there's two things, that the district has been, doing in the past, several years. So we have the required, UAL contribution annually, which again, we are required to actually pay that portion of the amortization for our actual UAL. This on page, 63, the table that you mentioned, these are the additional contributions that the district, paid or contributed in the past several years to kind of like prepay, our UAL. We actually are doing this, pretty much to, save interest, in the long run. And, that actually, if we actually didn't do all of this, we would actually have a much, higher, UAL and, normal cost and a much, lower, funded, status at this point if we actually didn't do this.
And reminder that we're on our virtual 10-year plan now too, which is to try to further manage down the UAL.
And also just to one thing, if there's no more questions, one last thing, I would just like to, emphasize that, even though, there's, a slightly, negative impact on, our liability, for June 30, 2023, because of, the unmet investment returns target. Our funded status, as you can see on page, 64, it actually stayed relatively the same. So it's still at 83%. Last year is also last year, when I say last year, it's, the June 2022 report, it's still at 83%. So that's still, kind of like a good news for us because, even with, even if our liabilities, slightly grew, our assets also, grew at, almost the same rate. So we have, pretty much the same, funded ratio or funded status for, all of our plans combined as of June 30, 2023.
I thought you were going to point out the good news, which is the preliminary return for 2024 is 9.3%.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Which is 2.5% above the discount rate.
So that's the other good news.
So the 1 year lag time, it's a 1 year lag, but they do have a preliminary number there that suggests that there'll be improvement in our numbers based on, much better investment returns.
So our annual, in this case, what would be our annual, I can read on this, annual outflow that you have to?
We're still calculating that because, again, we just implemented, our 10-year virtual fresh start, right? As of the moment, we're anticipating for our, UAL, just for the UAL additional UAL contribution, the one that, we're really not required to, but, we are doing it because of, past practice and now because of policy. We're anticipating an additional maybe around $4.4 to $5 million. It's not additional because, we've also budgeted around $5.1 million, for fiscal year 23-24 for the additional, contributions. So for the next upcoming year, once we finalize, the numbers, we're anticipating the same amount of, contribution because again, it's, 10-year fresh start, most likely if there's no additional, UAL that was created due to whatever reason, then we're gonna have to contribute the same number, like, every year until, we reach, that 10-year mark.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask a question about your role in this. If you look on page 65, the paragraph that's right above fiscal impact, it says that CalPERS is gathering data from agencies that will be affected. Are Are you providing data?
Yes, we did provide feedback because, eventually, we're gonna get, affected. We provided, some, feedback to CalPERS, what we think, could affect the district in terms of, not necessarily, our, budgets, because again, it's not, they're not changing, the way they do things, it's just the reporting. So on our end, if it's something that, could affect us, whether it's, policy wise or the way we report to the board, we provided, our feedback to them.
How do you provide that? In what form?
There is actually, a webinar that, was done, I think a couple of months ago. We provided their feedback, there during the session. And we also have the opportunity to actually email CalPERS as well with, any additional feedback.
I would love to see whatever feedback you provided, if you feel comfortable sharing that, it's okay with the chief. I'm just curious what we are saying as an agency to CalPERS about the situation.
I think, the feedback, that I have, which is, some other agencies also, have, during the session is, mostly about, separating, the UAL costs, for Petra and Classic members. Because although we're just, contributing, let's say, for Petra, we're, budgeting $1 million, for Classic, we're budgeting $2 million. Now we have to budget like $3 million. It's not gonna change, sure, but the way we do it internally, in terms of our internal practices, we actually budget it, per program. And each program, essentially, they have like, let's say for district admin, some people budgeted under district admin have, Petra employees, some have, Classic employees. So that's, one thing, really that's gonna affect us, how are we gonna allocate it if they're gonna combine? So, those are, that is actually just, the major, not major, but, pretty much, what, our concern is. So, yeah, so that's, that's the thing that, I can just, share for the time.
Can I do a process check on just two things real quick? One is, do we still have Virginia on the?
I do.
Okay, because it's showing you, not Virginia, and then secondly, can we put the air conditioner back on?
I'm here, Gary.
Okay,
What do you mean it's showing me?
it had your name up there, not Virginia, so I just want to make sure she was still on. We didn't lose her.
I'm here.
If you turn that little dial towards 70, that would be awesome.
I have one minute.
Can y'all hear me, Gary?
Yes, we can now. Yeah, you just
Okay,
disappeared from the screen.
I've been listening to the whole conversation, the whole
Okay.
meeting, so.
I figured you were just missing from the screens. Thank you. And thank you for the air conditioner. Huge.
I don't have any more clothes I can remove.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe council would be a problem. Go ahead, Robert. And then I'm gonna ask for a motion to accept the report.
Yeah, one clarification on attachment A, under the go, look at where the requirement contribution. Could you explain to me what, when we're talking about employees' contribution and it goes on after, other than the cost of sharing, explain to me where the highlighted bullet point, the required employee contribution in this report do not reflect any cost sharing arrangement between the agency and the employee. What is that really? What does that mean?
Yeah, so, let's say for each, a plan that we have, let's just say Safety Classic, because that's one that we have a cost sharing agreement with, our employees. With CalPERS, we need to contribute, let's say, for example, 30%. But, the cost sharing part of it, we can have that, in, the labor, negotiations or whatsoever, we're actually having, the employees shoulder like 3% of the 30%. So overall, the impact, to the district is not 30%, but 27%. Because, we're cost sharing like a certain portion of it, with the employees.
We have a motion to accept I'll move. Okay, and Robert, Director
Second.
Solano moved, Director Jones seconded it. And do we have any further discussion or satisfy everyone's curiosity adequately for this? Okay, we can do the roll call vote for this.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Raleigh?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye. Okay, so that unanimously past, thank you for that. I don't dismiss the complexity of those reports by any measure. I think for me, always the most challenging part of it is the timeline. Yeah, because here you have a great year, so you're always looking at it, having to remind yourself what the market conditions were previously. So I appreciate all the questions on that. It's definitely a complicated report. So moving on to the regular agenda items, we're now past the consent calendar. We're on to item number 5, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing the fire chief to execute the side letter. This is for the paramedic training program. And I will go ahead and make the motion because we need to make a minor change on it, which is I'm going to move to approve the resolution as stated. And also that we will be approving the waiver of the 30-day sunshine window. Just the timing of our special meeting where we discussed it in this meeting was 30 days. I believe it was 28 days. So we're waiving the 30-day sunshine window, which was mentioned in the staff report, just not in the resolution.
A second.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Which item are we on?
I'll
now?
second that motion, Gary.
So Robert already seconded it. He beat you to it. You got
Okay.
a lag time there. We are on item 5,
Five,
Director.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, which is the paramedic program resolution. So I now open it up. We discussed this in closed session before the letter with sunshine. Open up to any questions. Hearing no questions, we'll move it to a vote. Michelle?
Director Bernstein? Director Bernstein?
Yes, I'm still thinking.
Okay,
Um,
I can come back to
I
you.
know I'll vote aye.
Okay, Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley? She's on play for a second. Director Was that an aye?
I believe so.
Aye,
Thank you.
aye,
Director Solano?
yes, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Solano?
Aye.
Thank you. And Director Glenn?
Aye. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Thank you for that. And then the next one is adopting the resolution, item 6, approving the fiscal 24-25 Task Force 3 cooperative agreement. And we can have a motion for that, and then we can have any discussion necessary or not.
That's a move.
Okay, that was moved by Director Jones. Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay, Director Solano seconded it. And any discussion on this?
I just have a question. Yep. How much does the federal government owe us for all the deployments? Are they caught up?
Not counting the one this last week.
Well, of course.
Yeah, just being clear.
No,
But
you're correct, Gary.
yeah.
You,
No, I mean,
you talked about that, the finance.
are they a year behind from last year or? what?
Yeah, so I can talk about that, Director Solano. So for all the prior year claims that we have from the previous hurricanes from 2020 to 2023 or 2024, we collected all of them. So there are no more outstanding FEMA claims that we would actually need, to chase, FEMA with. But right now, we actually have a lot of deployments starting in July.
Yeah,
Current year, we have a lot, so I'm actually estimating around $700,000-800,000, but we already have like an invoice for that, actually more than that. So I don't have all the
Over $1 million?
information. Yeah.
It is over $1 million.
I would say like about $1 million, because just
We'll be in
one,
another couple weeks.
and that excludes,
It's a big
the current, FEMA deployment that we have, it's only, Calais related. So with that, we don't have the information yet. But we will certainly report out, the claims that, we will have, in the upcoming months in the monthly, treasurer's report into the finance committee.
But just for clarity, Elaine, because I think you said it, but I just want to make sure it was heard, which is all of the previously long dated claims have been closed out.
Correct.
And just for clarification, what Elaine was talking about was for all of our wildland fire deployments that we've had this summer. Still pending is a number related to the current deployment of our FEMA task force.
Weren't the slow payments from the state of California?
No, I think they're pretty good in actually, sending out, the reimbursement, payments to us. It's just a matter of, us trying to, submit, and reconcile all the invoices and then them trying to review it. But in terms of, the cycle of them paying us, it's gotten better, I would say. They've been, sending us checks, on a regular basis, once we have all, the claims submitted, they review it. And then, they submit an invoice, we sign it, and then they send us a check. So it's gotten, a lot better, I would say.
Just a clarification. So I know our fiscal year is July 1st, July 1st. So are we behind anything the months before July 1st where they owe us anything?
No, we're current.
We're current. So this maybe $1 million is from July 1.
Yes,
Those were state, those aren't FEMA.
those are state,
State.
yeah.
FEMA-able. We just spent recently. Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Okay, any further? Michelle, roll call.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bloom.
Aye. Okay, so that passes. So thank you for that. The next one is an item that has been in front of the Facilities Committee, which is adopt a resolution approving the Fire Station 77 kitchen remodel and full improvement project. We get a motion for that approval, have whatever discussion is necessary.
So move.
Okay,
Second.
so that was
I'll
moved by
move.
Director Solano and seconded by Director Jones. Your lag time on the phone there is not going to get you there.
I'm just not
Um,
even gonna try anymore.
Yeah, okay, that's,
Keep trying.
Get a little updated intercooler.
if there's a long silence when I ask for a motion, jump in. Okay, so Robert, I don't know if you want to make any comments.
Okay.
Discussed at the Facilities Committee relative to the kitchen remodel. Or if we want to just go to the staff.
I think you would like that
Okay.
report.
Yeah, are you looking for, I mean, the staff report speaks for itself. We obviously are in the midst of a remodeling project there. We hadn't originally included the Station 77 kitchen remodel in that. It needs to be remodeled for all of the reasons that are delineated in the staff report. There's actually some cost savings with the existing project coming in under budget. And so that's the recommendation from the Facilities Committee and from staff is that the board accepts this report and adopts the resolution. Open to any questions?
Do we have a plan for replacing or refurbishing all of our stations at this point, or are we only focusing on station one?
We are, I mean, that's actually something we're doing in the Facilities Committee as we speak, is trying to go through and actually develop a long-term capital replacement plan. So lots of conversations going on behind the scenes with Station 77. Part of the conversation was just about the fact that we don't currently own the land upon which 77 sits on, and how much do we want to invest in. Also conversations about Station 5 and its location. So I guess that the answer is, yes, we are looking at all of our facilities with the Facilities Committee and trying to develop kind of a short-term 5-year plan and then a longer-term plan to look at in the future for what's next.
Do you have any idea or general time frame for when Station 77 would be refurbished? I understand the difficulties, but assuming that you go ahead with it, when you would do that?
When we, when we would go ahead with the remodel or?
Of the whole,
Probably it's 20 or 25 years out, right? So the
so
station's
you
fine,
expect this kitchen to last for 20 or 25
Yes.
years?
along with the improvements that we're making to the vehicle maintenance facility.
Okay, well, that, it wasn't obvious, but if it was only gonna be 5 years or something like that, then it seemed
We
like.
don't have any short-term plans on doing a full replacement of the fire station. So, and that's been part of the conversation in the facility committee is how much do we invest into a property where we have 49 years left on the land lease there? So true. That's just understand that, yes, those conversations are absolutely happening in the facility.
You know, I just have to say, and I understand why they're doing it, but somehow the idea that we've got a bunch of rats in there, and so we're gonna replace the kitchen counters, somehow it didn't seem to make sense. It just seems odd to me.
That's not, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at replacing the cabinets. counters aren't related to RAD. So I think it gets woven into that whole conversation about the need to replace and upgrade everything in that kitchen, because it's outdated from whenever it was 1999, 96. So
So
Yeah,
for 25 years, it seems reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I think just facilities committee, the way we looked at projects at 77 in general was whatever we're deciding today, useful life is less than the 49 years left of the lease of the land. When we get further down the road, which will probably be past the time frame any of us are sitting at the table, the board should pay attention to investments being made where the investment would exceed the lease, the land
Useful
lease.
life, yeah.
So, but otherwise, right now, we're still in a safe window, given it's 49 years. And if I recall, the issue with the rats, everything was that the cabinets had to come out in order to remediate the issues because they're in the wall and in the drywall behind the cabinets. When you take the cabinets out, you have to take the countertops off in order to remove them. So,
I have a 110-year-old house.
yes, so you know all about that.
No, we don't have rats, we keep it clean.
It's not always a cleanliness issue, just for, in defense of the crews that inhabit it.
FYI, there's a railroad track and there's a open field
Yeah.
all up and down, and you're gonna have rats.
All right, let's not have a rat discussion. Do we have any further questions? Otherwise, we can do roll call vote. Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solana?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye. Okay, so that passes unanimously. And we are now on to item number 8, which is accept the fiscal year 23-24 financial year-end summary and adopt a resolution for the amendments to allocate the unassigned funds for fiscal year 23-24. And I know we're going to turn, there's a whole staff report here. I just have an observation, which is if you actually go to the resolution itself, the resolution itself has the clearest summary of what's being suggested as far as the allocations of the unassigned funds. So I would just point you to the resolution. We'll ask for a motion first.
Virginia, go ahead.
I'll move. Thanks,
All right,
Elaine.
so Virginia moved to approve the unassigned funds allocation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Robert seconded that. Okay, now I'll go to staff.
I will tee it up quickly.
Chief.
This for us has always been an annual process. It's better this year, a lot more clear, that as we close the books, there's always recommendations from staff as to the funds that they would go into. I will just make a note that the finance committee approved this at its October 1st meeting with a recommendation to move forward with approval. With that, I will turn it over.
So again, good evening everyone again. So I'm not gonna go over through the whole report, but what I'm gonna tell is, as the chief mentioned, the report itself outlines, the financial status report as of June 30, 2024. And this is actually would be the basis of our 2, recommendations tonight. And just so you know, these numbers are unaudited. So this hasn't been audited, so the audit is gonna start, actually the next few weeks. And, we're anticipating the audit to be completed in December of 2024. With that, I'm gonna go over that in general, as of fiscal year 2024, the district's total major fund balance increased by $34.1 million, from $99.7 million to $133.8 million from last year. With that, I'm gonna ask you to actually look at page 19 of the report, which is page 260 of the packet. So our first recommendation really is, to allocate the unassigned, fund balance that we currently have in the general fund. So as of June 30 of 2024, we have $30.7 billion of unassigned fund balance. That's in, the last, actually second to the last row, that where it says, 30,692,700 for 23-24 actuals. So this is the unassigned fund balance that, we're trying to reallocate to the current reserves or, various reserves that we have according to our policy that was just adopted last last May or June of this year. So overall, all of the recommendations here are in line with, again, the fund balance policy that, the board would adopted, in the last fiscal. So as you can see, we kept, prepaid asset, the same. It's related, to the equipment that, we prepaid and we're expecting it to be delivered this fiscal year. So we're keeping the reserves on that. We kept the budgetary deficit the same because it's still within, the range according to the policy. So right now it's about like 18% of, the current policy, which is between 15 to 30% of our expenditures. Capital asset replacement, we're recommending additional $328,000, which is the annual depreciation of our current capital assets. Again, that's according to the policy. Encumbrances, these are the outstanding purchase orders that we need to carry over from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. Pension stabilization, in connection to our discussion earlier, this is to supplement, our funds for, any pension costs that we may have, specifically for UAL. So according to the policy, we are gonna add like $585,000 for this specific reserve. For workers' comp and compensated absences, we are reducing it by $111,000 and $27,000 respectively. Because according to our policy, we are actually moving towards a 3-year average for this specific type of expenses. So with that, we recalculated the 3-year average, and it turns out are going to end up reducing our reserves with those amounts that I just mentioned. And lastly, the CIP, the capital improvement projects, you can see that we are adding $29.5 million, and that leads us to about $108 million for our CIP projects as of June of 2024. And that's the first recommendation that we have. And then the summary of the second recommendation is about the budget amendments, which again is also related to what we just discussed. So for the general fund, for the encumbrances, since this is budgeted last year and we're gonna carry it over this fiscal year, we're adding an additional $451,000, to add to the budget for 24-25 to account, for those encumbrances or outstanding purchase orders. That's it for the budget amendment for the general fund. For the CIP fund, same thing, encumbrances, I think. Oh, actually, it's split between general fund and the CIP fund for the encumbrances, but in total it's for $451,000. For the CIP fund, if you go on page page 255, the tables on page 14. Really, what you're seeing here is, we are actually truing up or adjusting the actual carryover. Because when we actually adopted, the budget last June, we are just, basing it off, our estimates. So now that we closed the books, we closed, our year end, we did all the procedures. These are the numbers that, came up, these are the actual carryovers. So what we're really trying to do here is, to adjust, the actual carryover of the budget for our, our current projects. And just so you know, we're not changing the overall budget that was approved by the board. It's just on a year-to-year basis, depending on what your actuals are. We're just carrying it over on a year-to-year until we complete the project. And then lastly, for the special revenue fund, for the budget amendment for 24-25, similar to the capital improvement projects. These are for the grants, as you may know. Again, last June, we adopted it, based on the estimates. Now that we closed the books, we ended up, we spent $37,000 more in last fiscal year. So now we are reducing our, budget with that same amount in order to, adjust whatever the true balance of the grants is. Grants are for fiscal year 24-25. So that's it for this report. Again, as Director Blue mentioned, all of the things that I mentioned is, summarized in, the resolution.
Yeah, let me ask you about page 255, as you referred to 14. um, of the actual report. There's two charts there. I'm referring to the lower chart for a moment. I don't understand really, I mean, I don't understand what we're doing here. So for example, let's look at Station 1 rebuild. The adopted budget was $873,400. And we're making this incredible change to the amended budget, so it's now 998,075. What are we communicating to people? What do we do? I mean, we can't rebuild it. So we've adjusted a number, but for what purpose? We spent so much human time going through all this rigmarole. I don't see what we've done.
I'm not quite sure what the question is, Director Person, but if we're talking about the actual budget, increasing the budget. Last fiscal year, I think, the approved budget is $266,000, which is, on, the first table, actually, $266,000. And at that time, when we actually, approved or adopted the budget, it was $125,000 less that we spent. So we actually proposed to carry over less amount. But now when we actually, close the books, we actually ended up spending less. So we're not really adding, any additional budget. It's actually the carryover budget from the previous year's, budget that we have.
But I'm trying to understand, why do we do that? I mean, how does that help our operations, or how, what are we doing when now that the rebuild is up to 998, so what? That's not enough to do anything. I mean, I don't understand what we've done with all this work that we put into this.
Yeah, but this budget would actually, fund, all the ongoing, activities, for the Station 1 rebuild. Like anything that we do, the architects, communicating with the architects, the plans and everything, this will fund, that piece. So I'm not.
I think you're just, let me interject. I think what you're doing is if I'm correct, is you're making this consistent with the approvals that the board made for the expenditures.
Correct.
To start the various investigative work associated with the Station 1 rebuild. And now at the end of the year, you're matching your amended budget to what we actually approved and what we're spending for the year or what we allocated for the year.
But I guess I don't understand, why do we do that? What if we didn't do that? Would it matter?
Yeah.
We won't have, if we don't do this, then, basically we'll end up with no budget with,
I think it's actually a different answer than that, which is it's impossible on every project and every expenditure when we're doing the budget to have the exact amount that's going to be expended during the year. In this particular case, the board approved changes to increase the amount of money being spent beyond what was budgeted. So this is simply correcting the budget now to match what the board actually approved.
But as long as we know what we spent, why do we care what we budgeted? I mean,
I think I can offer some clarity on it. And if you look at that first table on that page, where you're looking at the Station 1 rebuild and the remaining budget of $125,000, right? We could in theory roll it right into reserves, right? But we know that we're gonna have sufficient expenditures where we're gonna need that money for the budget. If you just go down to the Station 4 rebuild, a couple lines down, you can see at the end of we've got $783,000 in remaining budget. We don't rebudget that. We don't need it. We put it back into our reserves or our retained earnings, whatever you want to call it. But so it's not just useless. It's just we have an anticipation based on our expected expenditures that we're going to need that money, the savings rolled over into the current year's budget. Is it going to be enough? Maybe not, but it's kind of a normal budgeting practices. If you believe you're going to have expenditures that are going to be an amount or equal to that rollover, then we rebudget it rather than roll it into reserves and then come back to the board and ask them to pull it out of reserves and put it back into the budget. So we don't do it across the board. Yeah, it's thought out, and it's reason based on what we expect the current year's budget, the new budget or anticipated budget needs to be. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. It's just not across the board. Everything gets rolled over and rebudgeted. Some of it goes back.
so let me just say, so you're saying that what we're trying to do is modify the 24-25 budget to account for how the prior year ended up.
I mean, it's an easier way, since we have monies that we unspent in the prior year, to move them over to this year where we anticipate spending more, you know, as we have the architectural fees and stuff like that, so.
Well, there's two kinds of expenses there though, right? There's those that we budgeted and we spent. And there's those that we budgeted and we didn't spend, and in those, some of them we never intend to spend. So those go into other reserves. Some of them we do intend to spend, we roll them over to the next year. Any further questions? Okay, Michelle?
Director Bernstein?
Oh, we're voting on the motion to what specifically, I'm sorry.
Adopt the resolution allocating the funds that are on page 261.
On attachment A,
261.
okay, aye.
I'm sorry, can you say?
He said aye.
Aye. Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crowley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Okay, so that passed unanimously. Thank you, Elaine, for all the clarification in that. The next one is, I believe, reviewed by the HR committee, is to adopt a resolution reclassifying the emergency services specialty community volunteer coordinator positions to a new title called Community Risk Reduction Officer 1, 2, and 3. And I get a motion to approve that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Solano and a second from Director Bloom. I'll second it. Okay, and we now have discussion. So, because I don't want to go through the whole process.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so,
know this is due to some members of the board. I'll just share that this is kind of a cleanup and a realignment for us. We presented it to the HR committee with approval to move forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Francine to explain what it is we're doing and looking for the board approval.
So this, we're asking to amend the district's classification plan, and that would be the two positions, the community volunteer coordinator and the emergency services specialist. And we would reclassify those both to a risk reduction officer. They were budgeted in the 24-25 budget. One position is vacant and the other one is filled. And we would reclassify the person filling the community volunteer coordinator into a community risk reduction officer at the closest step to her current step. But there would be a slight increase, and I noted that the fiscal impact. And this would help the division, because for all these three positions, they're supporting different groups, different community groups for the district. And it would, since there's a lot of crossover for the positions, it also allows growth and movement, career growth into the positions. So we're asking if the board would approve the reclassification of the two positions to risk reduction officer. It wouldn't change the approved master pay schedule. The pay would remain the same, the community risk reduction officer 1, 2, and 3. I mean, that would ask me on this and ask me to agree. There isn't we're not amending the MOU, we're just amending the first class plan, so it would require any side letter or sunshine period.
thank you. Questions?
Just questions or comments?
Questions, comments, either one?
Yeah, we fought for, I don't know, over 10 years to get this notion of a community volunteer coordinator enshrined as part of what the district was doing. I think this is a mistake. I mean, I know that in general, the district doesn't like the idea of volunteers and so forth, but to somehow, I mean, what is a risk reduction person? I mean, it's just one of those BS kind of terms that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Whereas community volunteer, it's very clear what it means and what it should be doing and so forth. I'm not entirely happy with the direction of that position. And so in a way, this is what's already been occurring, is that we've been losing the community volunteer. I have certainly to give up the concept that in a catastrophe, the people that are gonna make the difference to us are community volunteers, and that we need to nurture that. And I don't know what reducing risk means. I mean, I think what we're gonna do is have people who are prepared. I guess that reduces risk, but firefighters reduce risks also. They put out the fire. So why don't we call all the firefighters risk reduction specialists and so forth? I mean, at some point, I think we're losing the identity of what this position was. I also think we did have a person at one point, Carol, who was very good at going out to the schools and doing outreach and so forth. That may be continuing. I'm not aware of it at all. I never hear about it. Nobody talks about it. But I think it's a task that should be done. And again, rolling it into this notion of risk reduction. Yeah, I mean, indirectly it reduces risk, but it doesn't really describe what the person does. I hate to lose those functions. I think those are functions we need. I think we need to get kids on board when they're young, when they're literally in first, second, third grade. They take stuff home to their parents. They convince their parents to get smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, and they do all these things. I think it's just a very important function. We don't have in our district that many elementary schools that a person couldn't visit every single one and make presentations at every single one. I think make a huge difference. So we're losing the functionality of this. And the fact that sometimes they help each other out, yeah, but why lump them all into one category? Yeah, I think, you know, the person at the permit desk is a risk reduction officer. Why? If you get a permit, you do things right, you reduce risk. But the name, at some point, you just are not describing the real function that needs to happen. So I think this is a bad idea.
Director Bernstein, and just to share some thoughts, I agree with you 99% on that. With everything you just said, what this really is, it's a classification series. The working title for Heather is still going to be our community volunteer coordinator. The working title for Amandeep is our community educator. Those are not going away. What we end up doing is we create some more generic kind of classifications that they fit in. Their working title and what they do, 100% of what Heather's job is to connect with our community volunteers and create those opportunities for them. So that doesn't change with this. What it does, the original vision, as I was listening to all of the growing pains from our volunteer groups, is we needed a Heather, we needed a community volunteer coordinator, created an independent position. Now, as we're hiring others around her, we're seeing how it fits, and we want to make sure that where Heather fits in the organization and the pay structure kind of works with where Amandeep is and a future person. So that's the intent behind it. I promise you that the working titles and the intent that you were just talking about with educating our kids and engaging our community volunteers will never.
Then why not give it a title that's more descriptive, like community preparedness coordinator or something of that sort?
No, unless they go into our job descriptions, no one in the public is going to see, Heather's not going to come out and go, hi, I'm Heather, I'm your risk reduction officer too. She'll be, I'm your community volunteer coordinator. How I get paid, the classification that I'm in is risk reduction officer too. So, and that happens pretty frequently. We've got a couple different senior analysts that one does facilities and one does FEMA grants, and they're generic positions, and their working titles are very different than the classification that they see.
I think all of what's in this job description, what Chuck is talking about, so look, reading the job descriptions, each one of them will define the actual role and the duties the person's going to be subscribing to. I think what's in the name, I think my understanding, the intent was you have these three different areas of bodies of work. There were similarities going on, and it just created progression of a movement that if a person so desire, come in as a one, they may have aspiration to become a two or three with different years of experience and training behind them. But the work itself, body of work is described in the job. From what I read that, I think that's what is creating a synergy of movement advancement within this one area, rather than having different isolated job descriptions. And somewhere along the line, they all overlap and to some extent, when I create this movement within the job structure that allow the person to be able to move from one to the other.
Rob? Yeah, we also, in our HR committee, we discussed it, and if you go under purpose, pretty much takes in everything that the chief just had talked about with the different volunteer groups, where we're really not getting rid of that coordinator, it's just you're consolidating some of the job description aspect. Did I say that right, Francie? Okay.
Do you have something else to add?
Oh, yeah, just, as Director Bernstein had asked about the name, and that's the name under the state fire marshal certification, and so that's why we use that name. And if you go to page 5 of the job description, you'll notice that the California State Fire Marshal, it's community, they have basically coursework on community risk educator and community risk specialist. And so we have this, like the chief mentioned, a generic title called Community Risk Reduction Officer, which incorporates all these things, the educator as well as the specialist. So that was the reason we chose that title. It wasn't just out of the blue. There was kind of an alignment with the state fire marshal certification.
Can you explain why that's important or what that even is? What is the certification?
So I don't know if I can explain it well, but from what I understand is when Carol Parker was here, her position was a public education officer. I think they changed kind of I don't know if it was the requirements or some of the certifications, and they moved to this new title. And that's why I think at the time the district created a risk reduction officer, community risk reduction officer classification. And it was said that when, Carol left, that would be the new title that we were going towards because of this state certification. And so we did that for the one position, but then as we had hired Heather and we were kind of reviewing these job descriptions, it seemed to make sense to allow, because if Heather's position is one position, once she's topped out, there's no growth, right, for her. We're a small agency, so there's very, little growth. And so we thought that it would make sense to allow for this series, because these positions do, they do risk reduction, but they do a lot of community involvement, community engagement, public education, emergency management through CERT. And that's, I think, why we went with that direction.
It's interesting, very short history lesson. When I was back at the National Fire Academy in, I don't know, the mid 2008, somewhere around there. A lot of this was happening with FEMA and at the National Fire Academy, the whole concept of community risk reduction. The state has adopted it. Just about every fire department in the nation is adopting this concept of community risk reduction. And yes, I agree with you on it feels very nebulous, this term. What does it mean? It's supposed to capture everything that we can do to prepare our communities, reduce risk, look at our, data and see how we can not just respond and be reactive, but do things proactively in advance. And it encapsulates everything from educating our youth to teaching our community members to be resilient, to on the fire prevention side, looking and seeing if there's things we can't do based on our calls. Like we're experiencing a lot of falls in Atherton, see if there's some fall protection programs we can put in place. So it's kind of a cohesive program to deal from soup to nuts, everything and every reason we might need to respond. And what can we do to either mitigate those things in advance or, at least minimize them moving forward in the future. But it's a very, very common term in most fire agencies in the country now.
There was one editorial comment made about the district doesn't care about volunteers. And I just want to address that I've been on the board 22 months. And from what I can tell, there's a strong commitment to volunteers in the district, the engagement, the coordination, the education, and the activities that are actually getting involved in the community, including our fire rehab and other things that they've been doing, but also the growth of the CERT program. So I just think it's important when there's an editorial comment that makes a broad brush comment that the district doesn't care about volunteers, that at least I share my perspective, which is in my 22 months on the board. I've seen a phenomenal commitment to the volunteer programs, and I'm appreciative of the work the staff's doing to do that. I think our new employees are extremely dedicated to that task, irrespective of what we call the classifications.
Gary?
Oh, Willie, I want to ask about
Get you next, Virginia.
I want to ask about
Okay.
the growth. Just so I'm understanding, you were suggesting that Heather had no place to go after that. So I don't know where she falls in the hierarchy that you're constructing here, but what would be her growth? In other words, if she did very well as a volunteer coordinator, what would she move into from there?
Here's our intent, and with you approving this tonight, what we are doing is reclassifying Andres's old position, ignore the name, but just the position is now gonna be a risk reduction officer 3. That person, if and when we hire he or she, will end up being the lead in our risk reduction unit. So the two positions that are occupied by both Heather and Amandi are kind of what we call a 1-2 classification. I don't remember what the specific term is, but generally we hire you at the 1 level, and once you have enough time and experience, you have the opportunity to move up into the 2 level, and you're still your same position and classification. What will happen with the approval of this 3 level is when we determine what the scope of that position is going to be, there may be internal interest from either 2 of the people that are in risk reduction 1 and 2 roles to move up into a higher position, if they have the skills and abilities that are required for the new job.
I'm still not, I'm not
Oh,
arguing,
sorry.
I'm trying to understand. We've got these kind of 2 slightly different functions, the Amandi function and the Heather function. If they're doing a good job and they're working in their areas, how do they get familiarity with the other person's position such that one of them could be a supervisor of
Sure.
both?
They do they do a lot of cross training right now. I mean, you look at a lot of the things they do, whether it's CERT training or community education, they kind of partner on it. So there's a lot of crossover. Then just internally, we provide them with a number of opportunities if they have the desire to go back to, at the National Fire Academy, FEMA has a complete community risk reduction program that we are happy to send them to and sponsor to send them. We'll help them with state fire marshal courses. There's lots of support there. They, they can go visit other agencies and get exposure that way with some exchange programs. So those are the opportunities. If you're a risk reduction officer 1, you have the opportunity, again, through just years of experience, to move to the 2 level without displacing someone or needing to compete for that position. It's the 1-2 level is flexibly staffed. That said, if and when we have a risk reduction officer 3 recruitment, we'll open it up to the outside, and then we will also, if either of our 2 internal candidates want to compete for it, they'll go through a competitive recruitment and compete. So,
Could one of them become a fire marshal?
that is possible, but not likely. When you look at the coursework with all of our fire prevention bureau staff, it's very different than the community risk reduction staff, but it's not impossible. It would take a lot of work. But even though they're all managed under John Johnson's division, they're really different kind of, course or paths that they're taking. So you kind of run parallel paths, so they don't overlap a whole lot between the fire prevention and fire plans reviews and stuff like that. But if somebody had an interest, they could certainly get some mentoring internally and take some of the courses that are offered through the community colleges.
Virginia?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on your comment, Gary. I agree with you that we do care about volunteers, and I think we've made a lot of improvements, with just the reorganization of the volunteer groups, of our internal staff for the benefit of the volunteer groups. And I think that the feedback that I've gotten is that, I think people are more engaged. They feel like we're out there more. I mean, I am glad that we're doing this and we have this motion, and I hope that this actually inspires more engagement from the community, because I mean, I just think Heather and Amandeep, and especially Heather, because I've worked with her and talked with her, since she got started, has been really great. And I want to do this because I think that it'll actually also inspire more engagement. And I just, thanks for bringing this forward to the HR committee.
Any further discussion or comments? Okay, Michelle.
Director Bernstein,
Nay.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Okay. So that passes. We got yours, Virginia. Thank you. So that passes on a 4-1 vote, with Director Bernstein being the nay vote.
I'd like my nay vote to reflect that I don't want to lose the identity of the community volunteer coordinator.
And I'll add a note on that that says that the chiefs made it clear that we're not losing the identity of the volunteer coordinator. And we'll move on to the next topic, which is adopt a resolution approving a board policy on special recognition of community members and organizations, which is something that also was brought through the HR committee. Chief?
Yes, I will kick it off with just a little history on this. Director Solano came to us asking about possibility of us developing a recognition program whereby the board might be able to recognize members of the community, et cetera. We presented it and developed it at the HR committee. And went back and forth a couple of times, and before you today is what the HR committee approved, suggesting we move it forward to the full board for approval of that. I will let Francine share a little bit about that. You're doing it, Francine? Or you
Before
want
she
to-
does, let's get a motion on the table. Thank you, Elaine. He's sneaking out. Okay, can we get a motion approving this?
I'll move.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, Virginia moved and Director Solano seconded. Now we'll go to Francine. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, the chief pretty much summarized it up. We did bring this to the committee, for 2 committee meetings, one to kind of, actually probably 3, one to discuss it, one to bring back policy, and one to bring back an online request form. We also did some surveying to some local agencies to see what they do, looked at their policies, their board policies and their procedures, and tried to create something that would work for the district, something that would be simple to administer. And that's the policy that we have in front of you.
Okay, so I'd like to make the first comment on this one. I'm actually really supportive of this idea. I found when we went to recognize the community members a few months ago for the resuscitation of the child, it was a little haphazard. There wasn't a real process. It wasn't that there wasn't good intent. There was good intent by everybody to recognize those that, kind of came to the aid of a child in distress and assisted, but there wasn't really a process for it either. So I think this outlines, from my lens, a nicely done process under which we can kind of manage community recognition when it comes up. So even if it doesn't lead to a vast array of nominations coming in through the community and through the web form, it does define a process for the board relative to how this would take place. And I think that's a step in the right direction. So my thanks for the work from the committee for working on this and the direction that you're taking on it. And then I will happy to open it to any other questions.
Yeah, I have a question, and I think it's a good idea to have a process. I'm curious to know if we're going to distinguish this process from commendations in general. So for example, when Sheriff Horsley retires and we give a commendation for his service, would this process be used, or is that a different kind of commendation that would follow a different process?
It's on the bottom, retired. Yeah, it's covered in that.
So you would expect that this would cover all commendations that we would use?
I think that's the intent, and then also if it's not working, then we tweak it. Yeah, but we would like for it to be a one-stop shop. This is just for basically external folks. For internal recognition and stuff, that's not necessarily the intention of this. Is for internal fire department employee recognition. We have the ability to do that already. But it allows the board to nominate someone, it allows the public to nominate someone. Assuming the board approves this tonight, we will put the form up on our website so that members of the public can nominate them.
And the approval still comes back to the board.
Yes, it does.
The chief is still free to do whatever he wants relative within, you know, his position.
I will keep
But
adding
this is,
people on to
this
that.
is for the board.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, good. Oh, go ahead.
This may be going into the weeds too much.
Uh-oh.
But just want
That never
to,
happens here.
yeah,
Go ahead, Robert. Give us the drum roll. No.
okay, help me with, just understand a little bit more. I know I've been in the meetings and we talk about it, but when I start seeing things in writing, I think kind of pop up to me. When you start talking about, on item number 2, scope, you talk about, certificate accommodation to honor remarkable accomplishment, exceptional service, and significant community events. When I move to the back, on page, 275, it gets down to the last paragraph, and it talks about, all requests will be reviewed by fire chief or the designated representative. Approved requests will be added to the board. Board members in it, for the vote, in a majority vote, from the board is required for approval. The question, or just kind of get a clarification, does this need to be, since we're asking for remarkable and we're asking for exceptional, and significant community, is it okay to have just a 3-2 vote? Or should there be a full 1 vote to fit not only the exceptional requirement, or that outstanding accomplishment the person has had versus just having 1 person or majority of people, or, you know, 1 more than the majority to approve this remarkable and exceptional work. I mean, I guess I'm looking at more of optics in terms of the person have done a great job. It seemed like the whole board should be excited about that remarkable job, but I know sometimes when the tide turns and you got 3 votes swing one way or the other, that can oftentimes, you know, kill the spirit of the intent. So it may not necessarily be an answerable kind of.
I have a perspective on it. For what it's worth, is I think it would be unfortunate if somebody was recommended here and made it through the process of review by the chief or the staff to make a recommendation. I think it'd be unfortunate to have a situation where board members are voting against, you know, kind of aligning with the chief on a community recognition recommendation. At the same time, I don't think as a board we should employ a practice where anything other than a majority vote is required for anything the board's trying to accomplish. It's just a generic kind of, I don't know if it's Robert's Rules of Order or just more generic policy. I think ultimately you need a consistent process under which a majority vote rules in the democratic board, and we have that. But I agree with the spirit of what you're saying, which is it'd be bad optics and it'd be an unfortunate situation where the board can't come to an agreement or a unanimous agreement on a commendation recommendation that's already been vetted by the chief and the staff.
And personally, it would make me sad to come forward with a recognition for a community member and have it be anything other than a 5-0 vote, so. Hopefully that will never happen. The first time that it happens, I'll probably figure out a way to change the process so I can privately vet it with each board member without violating the Brown Act in advance, so we never publicly embarrass somebody with a 4-1 or a 3-2 vote on recognition. So that would be my intent, but I'm pretty optimistic we'll get a 5-0 vote every time because it'll be like one of those feel-good events here. It will be apolitical and shouldn't cause anyone to need to pick or choose sides. It should just hopefully be a no-brainer. If it's not, we've gone wrong somewhere in the process and we'll have to tweak it and make sure that we can move it forward.
Yeah, I can't imagine you bringing stuff forward that doesn't meet that requirement.
Right.
I was thinking you could bring it down to 2.
Okay, any other comments?
It's just a question, in the last paragraph, it says all requests will be reviewed by the fire chief. I mean, I think in terms of wording and all that, that makes sense, but it's not clear why the fire chief would review it. Does the fire chief have the authority to not bring it forward?
Like most everything else.
Yeah, there will be some things that really may not be worthy. I don't know what they might be. And I think we had talked about for a while and with our first couple coming through the HR committee to really talk about the process and kind of vet it. But yeah, I don't know what those may be like.
I can give you a hypothetical. You could get a serial recommender, somebody that just routinely, every little thing recommends something.
Right, one here.
And at that point in time, you can look at it and go, I'm not gonna keep bringing these forward to the board, and they don't meet the class of recognition we're training these for. But I think we have to give the chief discretion on what he brings forward.
And just an FYI, not to go against anything here, but I think that she's gonna look at it, see how the process goes. I think that something of this nature, there's always, in my experience in the past, for different groups, that there's always a, use the word, this word too, a committee of made up of individuals within the organization, within the company, can come from a variety of different backgrounds, the secretary all the way up to the chief, composed of a small group, 2 or 3 at the most, and you can have kind of a odd voting situation. So look at it, and if they agree, they move it forward. Take the pressure off the chief, everything bad guy, or anybody, it's the group in the process, maybe.
I think that's a good idea. I don't think any policy prevents the chief from doing that. But ultimately, the decision to bring it to the board rests with the chief, which I think is correct. But I think that is actually a good recommendation to have a multidisciplinary kind of commendation committee. Because that also kind of deals with the, kind of an optic that says, yeah, if the chief doesn't agree, it doesn't get any visibility, it doesn't get discussed kind of idea. But so I think it's a good recommendation, but I don't think anything in the policy calls for it or prevents it either way. Good suggestion.
Yeah, it works out.
Okay. Any other commentary, comments, discussion? Michelle, we're ready for you.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye. Okay. We are on to item number 11. We have one item that was asked for last meeting from Director Brawley to discuss if the district should have a single consolidated internal controls policy. I'll give Director Crawley an opportunity to add additional commentary as to the topic she's recommending. And then we can have a vote as to whether we want to put that on the future agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, Gary. I think that was mainly in response to the grand jury report. So, I mean, there's really, based on the grand jury report, I just thought that if we were going to look at our internal control processes, we should, put it on the agenda to see if we wanted to give any feedback as the staff continues to kind of look at that vis-a-vis the grand jury recommendations, because they were kind of looking at that already. I don't know,
What would be
Francine,
an-
if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was gonna just ask Francine, actually, what is staff planning to do? Just at a very high level, not to address the topic, not to make an agenda item, but are you planning to look at a single internal control policy?
Yes.
Okay, so if she's planning to look at it, then I tend to agree that bringing it forward to the board for review when staff
Right.
has done it makes sense.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, no,
sure,
sorry, Francine.
That we are planning on doing that ahead of the assessment. You know, so we
That's
can, or.
We're not specifying when.
Okay.
It would be at
But
the
yes,
time,
we wanna see
at the
it.
time that you would review and create a consolidated internal controls policy. What the board saying is at that point in time, it should be an agenda item for the board to have input into that policy.
Correct.
Did I articulate
Yeah,
that?
there's
correctly?
no time,
Okay,
there's no deadline, right, Gary? I mean, it's just, I
Right.
wanted to follow our processes and also our, just to make sure that if the board wants to discuss it, it's on the agenda so that's, in compliance with the Brown Act too.
Yeah.
So whenever the staff's ready to bring it forward, it can be it is a quote unquote future agenda item.
okay. Anybody need to
Thanks.
have questions on it? Otherwise we can vote.
Do
on
I
this.
need to make a motion?
Yes, we need a motion, sorry. I always skip the motion.
I'll make a
process.
motion.
Okay, so Virginia
Okay,
moved
I'll
to have
move.
this on the agenda, and I will second that item for to put this on the agenda. And if there's no further discussions, we can do a roll call vote on this item.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Corrali. Director Corrali, are you with us? What did she say? We'll come back to her. Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Corrali,
My internet connection's unstable, but
You were frozen for a second, so we got a delayed response. Okay, so that,
aye.
that item will go on a future agenda item. We'll put it on the tracking
I
list.
on item number 7 from having.
Yeah, could be, but that's okay. We're gonna take it at the contemporaneous time that it occurred. And then we have the list for any new proposed agenda items, of which none were submitted in advance, but we can entertain new ones for the list for discussion at the next meeting.
May I start?
Yes,
Okay, well, we had Gary Wagner that came here and read a resolution into the record. And I'd like to put that on our next agenda for board discussion and staffing, well, board discussion.
okay, so that will go on the list to be voted on at the next meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Michelle, do you have a copy of that?
yes.
Okay, thank you. And then, I have two more.
Go ahead.
Okay, the Menlo Park City School District has proposed a Measure U that, and one of their projects is a new alarm system for all their facilities. And I had emailed the chief to see what our resources were to help them prepare a alarm system since theirs is out of date. So I'd like to, I don't know how to phrase this other than assist Menlo Park City School District in upgrading their school alarm system. Okay, and have it as a discussion item, have a chief, fire prevention.
Are you talking about fire alarm?
Yeah.
Rob, you were cutting out, Rob, but whatever, are you asking that the districts help Menlo Park City School District?
We'll come back with motions, Virginia, on each of these.
Oh, okay,
We have
okay,
to vote
sorry.
on them each individually.
Okay,
I'm trying to get the whole list, and then once I have the whole list from all directors, we'll come back one by one for a motion on them and then a vote on them. Or actually, we don't. Let me correct
it's
that.
just
They
suggested
actually just go
items,
on the
right?
list for next time. Yeah, there is
Yeah.
no vote, so I'm just recording them. Okay,
Okay,
So,
thank
so
you.
that item was,
Now we'll be
to
quiet.
look at how the board, how the district can help the Menlo Park School District with their alarm system process as defined by Measure U. Did I correct? Get
That's
that
fine.
correct?
That's fine,
Okay.
thank you.
And then you said you had a third?
No, that's
So
it.
that was,
Thank you.
okay. Virginia, any items go on the list from you?
No, not right now, thanks.
Robert? And Director Burns? Okay, so we just have the two items then, from Director Solano that will go onto the list for the next meeting to be discussed. Okay, thank you. We will move on to committee reports, and we can start with human resources, though I think we just approved everything they were working on, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. Robert, you want to add anything? Oh, we good?
Done.
Okay, thank you, Gary. All right, and facilities committee?
I'm done too.
Done too.
Two.
No, the only thing I would just provide is that additional clarification that we are following the process outlined to the board. The document was a little bit off on what was approved. The project, I just wanted to add clarification that the chief didn't provide, which is we're going to come back at multiple milestones, but especially those that require any funding approval. So the only thing that's funded right now is that initial budget to do all this investigative work of the preliminary architecture work. And some of, I believe, the geotechnical work and others. So it will be back in front of the board again. The committee is simply overseeing a process, not an approval system. Anything to that? Okay, and Virginia Finance Committee?
No, thanks for approving everything. I just want to add one last thing. I think that the grand jury report responses were submitted then, right, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's all I have.
Yeah, so
Do you have
Francine did
anything,
say that they
Gary?
received, Francine did say they received confirmation that our response was received. as well.
Okay, great. Do you have anything to add, Gary?
No, I do not.
Thanks.
Okay, liaison reports, Town of Atherton. So in Town of Atherton, I listened to as much as I could take of the public hearing on the housing element plan. They ultimately, I guess, after I dropped off, they continued that and they're having a secondary meeting on it. But this is trying to get, the public hearing is actually around making the code changes or the zoning changes necessary to support the housing element. So you can decide that you want to do multi-family housing on a given parcel, but as part of your submittal process to the state, you do have to rezone those properties to meet that new requirement. So this was the public hearing around that. So needless to say, it was another opportunity for all the community members impacted and that don't particularly like the decisions to revisit all the decisions all over again, which is around the zoning changes through the public hearing. So I believe they were having another one, I want to say, I don't think it's tomorrow night, but they may have already had it. They had a regular meeting. So that's all I have to report on Town of Atherton. It's just ongoing work on their housing element and not without controversy. I would just offer the observation that the interesting part for me, having watched it, is that at least some of the properties they were discussing are now no longer available to be discussed because they've been developed. And so there was a property on Valparaiso that got a lot of attention. There's now 2 large single-family homes that are fully framed on that property. So, and that was similar to, relative to the fire district's property, if you recall, similar to our situation where we already had approved building permits for the accessory structure on the property that we control. So that has, so the housing element process did not stop the issuance of permits for some of these properties that takes them off the list.
The list of potential
Potential,
multi-family.
yeah, multifamily, yeah. So it's been a complicated process. I gotta tell you, I feel sorry for the council members. That's a complicated topic for them to try to sort out, given the state requirements around it.
Terrible.
Yeah, so, That's my only commentary is to defend their hard work, because they put hours or hundreds of hours into it. And then we'll go to City of East Palo Alto.
Really, other thing I want to add is that it's gonna be a long, complicated and fight for, there's 3 seats are up and there's 9 people that's running. 3 or 4 people that's running are they are running in relationship to the issue around the sewer.
What?
Sewer that the sanitation district is now has been snatched or taken away from the current board, and now it's gonna be operating by the city. Our Westport, I think it is, sanitation system to run that. But there's a lot of heated debate that's going on. It's gonna be pretty interesting race too. So that's about it.
Okay, City of Menlo Park,
I have no report.
County of San Mateo, Districts 3 and 4, Virginia.
No, no report.
Okay, and pre-hospital JPA.
Didn't meet.
Didn't meet, yeah.
Did not meet?
Yeah.
Did not meet.
I think that was the report last
The
time.
only thing
It
is I
was
just
the
wanted to
quarterly
know-
meeting that didn't happen.
You're right. Well, concerning the pre-medical, AMR is the contract or major contractor for Department of Homeland Security for FEMA, providing ambulance services in disaster areas.
Going across the country.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, yeah, I would like to know if that affected any of the ambulances here that support our fire, operations, chief?
Not that I heard of, I will check in with Melanie and see if there's any issues.
Yeah, could you please?
Yeah, usually they come to my attention.
Because, they're the major contractor for FEMA and for DHS.
Yeah, I know,
Disasters.
I know somebody in the past, I was just gonna say, that deployed with them on one, not this most recent
Yeah.
one, that did deploy cross-country for service. And they do it very similar to fire, which is everything's backfilled, there's no interruption to local services when they do that.
That's
So,
what I check.
yeah, but Chief should confirm it, but
I
that
will
was,
check.
that was certainly several years ago how it worked. Okay. Ad hoc committee reports, Virginia,
No, nothing, but I'm hoping we'll schedule a meeting soon.
okay. And then reports, requests of directors, anything?
I have some,
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, okay,
We'll
thank
go
you.
Rob, then Virginia.
sure.
Michelle, there were some emails that I know you were off Friday and then Monday was a holiday. And there were a few emails that weren't included in the packet, and I understand that it was a holiday and everything.
I emailed them all to you earlier today, and I also posted them to the packet on the website, so they're all there.
Okay, because I was looking through these and I see that there's a bunch missing.
There's none missing. Your paper packet doesn't have them because they came in after, but now if you
That's
were to
what
go
I'm
to the website, they're all on the
Great.
website, and
Thank you.
I also,
I didn't check the website.
and I
Okay.
emailed you all of them today. You
Okay,
might not have seen it yet.
So the summary of that is that the website is current
Well,
Correct.
of all
That's fine.
received
Thank you.
letters to date.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great, thanks.
okay. Virginia?
Yeah, so on September 28th, I went to a few events. One was the Los Lomitas Pancake Breakfast. And Chief, I just wanted to thank you and the crew that day for coming out to the pancake breakfast on short notice, but I think everyone loved seeing the firefighters and our crew, and I think they enjoyed being with the kids too. It was a really great turnout. I think there were, I want to say 300-400 people there. It was to benefit, Los Lomitas School, and I think the foundation wanted to just, do something for the community as well. So if you can I think it was James Pickerel who was there. So if you can thank everyone from that crew, that would be great. And thank you to Then I went to the Chapel Home and Museum open house because a neighbor wanted to go and he loved it. And actually, it was really fun to see some community members there. There were a few kids there who loved it, and I'm just glad that the retired firefighters are, there and opening up the museum so that the community can come and visit. And last was that evening was the or that afternoon into the evening was the Relay for Life, which I know Michael Seaton is passionate about, and he outdid himself this year. And so if you could give him a huge thank you from Amy Boggs as well. She's the organizer for Relay for Life, and from me, it was it was a super event. And our explorers, they were there and provided and served dinner and placed those luminarias with the name of survivors or people who family members, loved ones who were died from cancer, along the track. And so it's such a great community event, and I'm just so happy and proud that our fire district, and especially Michael Seaton, continues to be a big part of the success for Relay for Life. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports? Okay, President's report. I'll be relatively brief. Just a reminder, pancake breakfast, 7:30 to 11 o'clock this Saturday. I know the chief mentioned that already. I want to mention that as it relates to the EPREP ad hoc committee, I asked Virginia, and I am a member of that committee as ad hoc committee as well, to add the dispatch services to that committee's role. There's been some ongoing discussions between the chief and others around the dispatch function, and I think it's worthy of having an ad hoc committee doing it, but given we're staffing committees with 4 members of the board, not all 5 members, I added that to the an existing committee just for efficiency purposes. So Virginia and I will pick that up as part of the EPREP committee, and then anything that comes out of those discussions we'll bring back to the board, of course, like anything else. On the new agenda items, there have been situations where some board members email and say, I'd like to put this on the list of new proposed agenda items, and others don't. I would just encourage you from a process perspective to feel free to send those in, because then they show up on the list and we have the clarity of what's being requested, and we're not trying to capture it live. We're still not going to discuss it here. It's going to get discussed at the subsequent meeting. But as far as having clarity of the new proposed agenda items, just helpful to get them in advance. So feel free to get those into Michelle, and she'll put them on the list verbatim as you've worded them, versus us trying to paraphrase them out of the meeting. And I think that'll just make that section go a little faster as well in the meetings. And I don't, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's any Brown Act issue just listing those. We're simply recording the request. We're not discussing them.
No problem.
Okay. And then I would just like to thank our staff members, but also our supporting agencies for the Task Force 3 deployment. There was, it's a massive process getting them kind of on the road and out the door and get them across country. And so, a lot of people involved with it. I'm really pleased to see that the district's taking advantage of things like the CERT volunteers and others to come in and help with that process. It's a little bit of, you can't call it a marathon, it's just an absolute sprint to get all them loaded and get them out the door. And I do appreciate, Chief, you addressing the commentary about it being fully reimbursed. There were a couple next door postings and others about well, shouldn't this money be used in the community? And some of the community members provided kind of mutual aid like descriptions of it. I chose not to interject because next door is not for the faint of heart as far as the forum goes. But I did ask the chief, and he did address it here just to make comment that these are reimbursed events for us. And I don't have anything else for the president's report. The correspondence section, I think we've addressed that now and clarified that all correspondence received prior to this meeting, I think all of it relating to the 320 Sheridan Drive project has now been posted to the website. So I think we're good on that front. And unless anybody has anything else, I'm going to adjourn us to our, not our next scheduled meeting, to our next special meeting, which will be our meeting on, somebody give me the date?
Pancake bread.
No, not the pancake bread. This is the
A week
meeting for
from
the
tomorrow.
strategic plan, a week from tomorrow, so a week from Wednesday.
So 23rd.
Close enough for government.
Is it the 23rd?
I believe
Tomorrow's
so.
the 16th.
Yeah. It's next
Yes,
Wednesday.
it's the 23rd.
Okay, so
What time again, just to, Be clear.
7.
7 to 9 o'clock.
and are we here? Or we're in the conference room?
Yeah, that is a good question. I don't think it's stated. No, it's at this room here. The invitation has this room. So it'll be in the Station 1 classroom for that session. 7 to 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 23rd, will be our next meeting. That is for the strategic plan and what is it, Triton, AP Triton? AP Triton, their report, and this is the board's part of the info
So
process. 7 to 9, yeah. That's the scheduled time. I can't guarantee you.
Chief, when we have the strategic plan thing, I'd be interested to know who are the so-called, well, I remember the term, interested parties or affected parties or whatever.
Stakeholders.
Stakeholders, who are the stakeholders that we consider stakeholders?
Okay,
We'll give you a list of everyone that attended and was invited, and the community filled out surveys anonymously also. so.
Michelle, were you waiting for me on something other than adjourning?
Yeah, no, just that.
Okay, we are adjourning the meeting at 9:36 p.m. Virginia, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
remotely.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everyone.
Why not?